Some people are driven crazy by their mistakes. Maybe I'm one of them. Sometimes a mistake just slipped through the cracks.
It's not a small town, it's a medium to large town.
The sponge in question is Smenospongia.
Not the right sponge. Now the world has a false idea of what Smenospongia aurea truly looks like, and I'm to blame.
An unaddictive alternative to barbiturates.
Not barbiturate, barbiturate. That's clearly an illustration of Amanita pantherina, not Amanita phalloides. There's a difference. This map is wrong. Salvia divinorum is actually legal in South Carolina. The worst mistake of all. Alfred Savinelli lied to me.
You decided that you wanted to write a pamphlet about it under a pseudonym.
Such a bizarre lie.
You lied to me on television.
You know, there's not really instructions on this sort of stuff. I've learned some really good techniques.
I've been fascinated by psychoactive drugs my whole life. I love to study their chemistry and impact on society. And my work has allowed me to investigate extraordinary substances around the world. Yet there are still mysteries that remain.
In 2017, I solved one of the greatest mysteries in ethnoherpetological history, centered around Bufo alvarius, the only species of toad known to produce a powerful tryptamine called 5-MeO-DMT. Now one of the most coveted psychedelics internationally, the growing demand has inspired roving bands of toad milkers to scour the Sonoran Desert in search of a venom more valuable than gold. Once dried, the venom is smoked to provide entry into a numinous realm of boundless white light.
Yes, you can make a cookie with love.
But the smoking of this venom has a humble origin that can be traced to a single pamphlet called Bufo alvarius, the psychedelic toad of the Sonoran Desert. Written in 1983, the pamphlet is a work of extraordinary erudition that seemingly emerged out of nowhere. It describes everything from the venom's chemical composition to its qualitative effects when smoked, in addition to techniques for locating and milking the toad. Without a history of human use, the identity of the author becomes even more intriguing. Who could have written this guide, and who would have taken the incredible risk of smoking the venom with nothing but evidence of its toxicity? Who is Albert Most? After interviewing several claimants to the Almost name, my evidence led me to a toad specialist and incense entrepreneur,
Savinelli.
who reluctantly acknowledged his authorship of the pamphlet.
You published this pamphlet in 1983.
Yes.
He's lying.
Can you tell me how you got to the point that you were investigating toad venom?
Sure. It began by me gathering river toads, expressing the venom onto cigarettes and smoking it.
And I propagated a lie.
I noticed that you dedicated the pamphlet that you authored to Pat and Quanah. Is that Quanah Parker that you were? And who's Pat?
Pat was his wife.
Quanah Parker had 8 wives, and not a single one of them was named Pat. I could have looked that up.
After the episode was released, thoughtful viewers were quick to offer constructive criticism.
I knew there were unusual things about him. He didn't live in Denton, Texas, where the pamphlet was published. He didn't have any of the original pamphlets, any of the original artwork, any of the original t-shirts, also a red flag.
Was it modesty or dishonesty? I called one more time to set the story straight.
Why was Venom Press based in Denton, Texas? Were you living in Texas at some point? I want to make sure everything is factually correct, that you are Albert Most.
That's almost correct. Hamilton, let me get back to you, okay?
I was duped. It was my responsibility to evaluate the truth of his claims.
These mistakes have consequences. A shameful history of journalistic misrepresentation of psychoactive toads has resulted in the tragic ruination of lives, none more severely than a clinical pharmacist and toad educator named Robert Shepard. Although he wasn't Albert Most, I hoped Dr. Shepard could provide insight into the consequences of unscrupulous toad journalism.
Hey. Hi. Good to meet you.
I didn't do anything wrong. Even with Albert's pamphlet out in '83, my arrest in '94 really brought this whole toad phenomenon to the awareness of the world. And the picture that was being painted by the media was not true.
And where did toads enter this story?
The toads, I was teaching at an outdoor environmental education school, teaching 6th grade students various different reptiles and amphibians. The Bufo alvarius toads I found in Arizona.
Your 4 toads who are named Hans, Franz, Peter, and Brian.
Correct.
So what went wrong?
There was a disgruntled employee that was released from the school. She claimed to be the long-lost daughter of Howard Hughes. And she was calling law enforcement, telling them that I was giving drugs to the children. Law enforcement appeared on the scene and asked me, "So Robert, what are you doing?" And at that point I said, "I'm not breaking any laws." And their response was, "No, we think we will just arrest you and let the courts figure this all out." And then that's when the shit hit the fan. Both my wife and I were arrested. We had no idea how the media would react. I was shocked. The media just went crazy with it. They hounded me. They were at my door. They would be following me in their vehicles with cameras.
There were hundreds of stories published.
Oh, I know. It was sensationalized. It made front page news in almost every newspaper worldwide.
And this was used to paint you as a deranged drug addict.
Yes. That somehow a toad cult had started, and I was the new toad guru. And as more and more misinformation came out in the media, I went to my lawyer and I said, Jim, this is terrible. I've got to tell my story. I've got to tell the truth. And he said, no, you cannot say anything. You just need to keep your mouth closed.
While the toads themselves are not illegal, Shepard was charged with possession of bufotenine. But when a forensic chemist was tasked with analyzing the venom, no bufotenine was present. The only chemical detected was 5-methoxy-DMT, which had yet to become a controlled substance in the United States, and the charges were dropped.
Nothing was ever published saying that I was exonerated, because that no longer was newsworthy. And that just outraged me. I lost everything. I lost everything. I have nothing to live on. I had $8. And then started my life over again. I think it was an experience I was to go through that set me on the path that became my shamanic way of life.
Bob was a victim of the media's mistakes, and I was a perpetrator. It was clear we both needed healing.
You do ceremonies in the caves.
They call them caves, but they're actually lava tubes.
You could exorcise the journalistic demons of the past.
We can certainly do that, yeah. Caves are very divine feminine in nature.
intention is to release any negativity attached to the Bufo incident.
I was duped. Alfred Savinelli was lying about being Almost, being the author of that pamphlet. And I started to feel very bad when I realized what happened because I felt that I was partially responsible.
Forgive and forget. And so it is.
It's scary to acknowledge mistakes.
It is. It really is. Yes. Just follow your heart, Hamilton. We're all in this together.
Well, thank you.
As the spirits of past journalistic errors drifted into the sky above Mount Shasta, I knew a path of truth and discovery lay before me.
Hey, Hamilton. I heard you were looking for Albert Most. Perhaps I can help you fill in the missing pieces of your puzzle. I am Albert Most. I wrote about the toad. I smoked the toad venom. I am Albert Most. Let's talk sometime. Ken, Denton, Texas.
When I received a letter from a provocative new Almost claimant, I could resume my investigation. This time, revolving around a secretive Texan named Ken Nelson. It was in Denton that I met Scott Sellers, one of Ken's oldest friends.
We met in 1984 and slowly built a relationship over time.
He was eager to provide evidence of Ken's research.
Penny Press. Yeah, it was Penny Press, and that's where he had them printed. I had caught your show. It turned out to be the season 2, episode 1 premiere. And it was about Bufo. And when y'all pulled out that book, it was just like, oh my God.
Who is Albert Most?
To really realize how big this thing has gotten. And of course, Al Savinelli, you cannot let him take the credit.
I really like what nobody else is doing.
You can't let him get away with this.
Albert Most is living in rural Texas, off the grid, not in New Mexico.
This is it?
Yeah. He bought this missile base.
Wow.
Isn't this incredible? It's really a beautiful thing that he's done here.
A relic of the Cold War arms race, the base was once equipped with nuclear warheads and Nike missiles designed to intercept Soviet bombers. Long after it was decommissioned for military use, Ken bought the base and lived in an officer's barracks. He tore down walls, searched for tunnels rumored to lay beneath Denton, and created artistic arrangements of small metal skulls. A one-man offensive against a world without 5-methoxy-DMT.
And why do you think he was so interested in psychedelics?
I think it started out as fun, but then he realized that we used to talk about, approaching, seeing around the corner. You're along this wall of life, and it gives you a chance to kind of see around that corner and see something else and see the world in a different way. And he did. And I think psychedelics helped him do that.
And are these notes from when he was writing the pamphlet?
We found these in a footlocker. I was hoping you could help us figure out what is here.
These are diagrams for a batch reactor. Did he ever have a lab that he was?
Nope. He really didn't have a teacher. There's so much research. This is the original first edition. These are little matchbooks. When we'd go eat lunch, we'd just throw 5 of them on the table.
That's amazing.
He's real proud of that. That's the van he rode in. that he drove in and squirted the venom on the windshield. But he's out looking for toads.
A psychedelic researcher and committed environmentalist, Ken was an unlikely recruit, but he joined the military in order to learn tactics to inform his anti-nuclear protests. While stationed in Georgia, he read an article in the August 1981 issue of Omni magazine, summarizing the work of anthropologist Jeanette Runquist, who had excavated 10,000 toad bones from an ancient Cherokee settlement in North Carolina. Fascinated by the possibility of a psychedelic toad, he immersed himself in scientific literature and traveled to Gila, Arizona to locate Bufo alvarius, but found nothing, as the toads were still estivating in their subterranean refugia. Undeterred, he returned during the monsoon season of 1983 in his Chevy sport van with a collie named Quana and his then-girlfriend, Pat. When Quana spotted a toad near their campsite, Ken leapt into action. He squirted the venom onto the windshield of his sport van, dried it, smoked it, and had the first known experience with venom of the psychedelic toad of the Sonoran Desert. In his pamphlet, Ken described the experience as being completely absorbed in a complex chemical event characterized by an overload of thoughts and perception, brief collapse of the ego, and a loss of the space-time continuum. He returned to Denton, Texas, where he became a resident advisor and enrolled in a technical writing class to help publish the results of his research. The product was a new religion, a series of t-shirts, a specialized toad venom smoking pipe, 5-methoxy-DMT matches, and a small pamphlet that would forever change ethno-herpetological history.
I was first. In science, when you scoop everybody, you beat them to the punch. So once I realized what I had, it was a big deal. And smoked it.
After the publication of his pamphlets, Ken left reams of fan mail unanswered and ignored inquiries from the scientific community. He never used the Albert Most name again. When he bought the decommissioned Nike missile base, he focused his efforts on transforming it into a psychedelic utopia where he lived for 30 years. And as international interest in Bufo alvarius grew, only a handful of Dentonites knew the true identity of Albert Most.
It's hot back here. Okay. A lot of this stuff is kind of buried. You can see I really take care of my stuff.
Huh. Oh, wow.
It's real fragile because it's been buried back here. But this is ancient. I don't know if we can salvage it. Oh, I found my portfolio. I think I can get it.
Gail Patterson is best known for a spiced meat dish called spanked balls at her restaurant, Big Fatty's Spanking Shack, and her work breeding miniature horses.
Here, just don't let go.
But before that, she was a struggling student who lent her artistic talents to a toad-obsessed friend named Ken.
There it is. Psychedelic toad. This is the original of my artwork. He did the research, and he trusts me to be a part of this with him. He gave me photographs, and then I just drew from the photographs.
And did you have experiences with the Bufo?
Yes, a long time ago, and turned that into the trip picture for the book. The trip picture is based on this photograph. That's me. You can see it.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So you can tell that that is the original trip picture. It was my art. Ken's a pretty interesting guy. We did the whole thing with the missile base, and then that got kind of crazy out there at the base. He was pretty obsessed with the tunnels.
Oh, wow. This is so cool.
It's been a while since we spent this much time in this room.
So he was looking for tunnels here?
He's looking for tunnels here, yes.
Must have been a huge amount of work. How long did he spend doing this?
3 years. You know, there'd been rumors around, I'd say for decades, that there were tunnels at this missile base, and he was determined to find them.
Wow. I mean, I guess it's the kind of curiosity you need to discover something new.
Yeah, I see your point.
And do you remember your first impression when you heard about Bufo alvarius and all of this?
It's nuts. Was my first impression. It's crazy. But then I read the book, and I got to know Ken. With all his information, he had done all the research. Ken put it together and realized that, holy cow, there's a freaking psychedelic toad in Arizona. Who would have thought?
Ken was different. He was very smart, very intent on research, but you have to think pre-internet, so research was really precious. And so I would drive him to the medical library. He was exploring a lot of different plants, but a bit later had really identified this toad. He said, I'm doing it, I'm going to southern Arizona, I'm gonna find this toad. All I could say is, Ken, are you sure? I mean, I was worried. I mean, we're taught these things are poisonous. But he knew then, before he went out, it wasn't something you don't eat the toad. You know, he knew what to do, or at least he had a theory of what to do.
Can the enzymatic soup be cultured with serotonin to yield 5-MeO-DMT? How?
Just brainstorming questions almost.
They're all good questions.
Ken was only known for one short pamphlet, but his files contain hundreds of pages of notes for unrealized projects, with a special emphasis on plans to construct a synthetic toad venom machine.
These are diagrams for a batch reactor. He's looking for biosynthetic pathways that could be exploited in vitro. Ties into this idea of producing it synthetically.
I did a lot of research on it.
It's a purification of the toad venom to get the isolated 5-MeO-DMT. It's pretty clear that he's looking for a way to produce 5-MeO-DMT without using toads.
There's people out there milking them till they bleed, which is just driving this amazing animal to extinction. Killing the golden goose. He was very concerned about the toad being abused, mishandled. It's just what he envisioned 35 years ago.
I just see that the interest in it is so strong that it's going to become popular. I think you guys got to keep this in our bag of tricks.
There has long been resistance to synthetic substances in the psychedelic community. So when I received an invitation to give a talk at a conference of toad venom enthusiasts, I saw it as an opportunity to build upon Ken's research and offer a scientific solution for the conservation of psychedelic toads. Perhaps it would be here, at the World Bufo alvarius Congress, that I might find a receptive group of staunch rationalists.
Walking stick.
What have you been up to?
I have been staying active in toad venom. In fact, that particular experience motivates me every single day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I made something else for you.
Wow.
Yeah. More than anything, it's just about continuing to replicate it and to echo forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, because it was such a powerful moment. To see it play out on TV was the most freakiest shit ever.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
There was no shortage of merchandise for sale. Unsanctioned t-shirts printed with the artwork Gail Patterson made for Ken's pamphlet, and plush Bufo alvarius throw pillows, $50 a piece.
Ya la gente ha fumado mucho. Antes trabajaba los viernes, los sábados y domingos, pues era. Toda la semana me cae trabajo.
Hello everyone, welcome to WBAC. Hello.
Oh my God. Whew, thank you. So, as we know, this medicine of 5-MeO-DMT from this sacred creature, the Bufo alvarius toad, is just that. It is a sacred medicine. It is carried in the body of this creature for 9 months under the ground in the darkness, potentiating the 5-MeO-DMT as well as other alkaloids. There is a phenomenon happening with the Bufo alvarius toad around the world. You see it all over social media, and it's going to grow and bloom, and it's going to get very big very soon.
This beautiful spirit, Bufo alvarius,
is a sacrament.
Beautiful sacrament.
Another ally.
Uno de los tesoros más grandes de la humanidad.
How do we know this toad that we're getting is collected properly? Is there respect for the toad?
This is a great and sacred gift from the toad. Many people are interested, and so the supply and demand of medicine, we just hope it's kept sacred. Don't kill them.
Tanta gente también, indirecto o directamente, ha salido bendecida y favorecida por este medicamento. Hemos empezado a ver que la población de sapos Bufo alvarius que tenemos en Sonora está desapareciendo. Hay lugares muy focalizados a los que nosotros íbamos a recolectar el medicamento y ahora ya no hay ni uno, pues está condenado a desaparecer, como ya nos ha pasado con otros animales.
Por favor, den la bienvenida al señor Hamilton Morris. Hablarnos de la química.
Hey, everybody. So there's a lot of very well-intentioned discussion about how best to milk these toads. And I don't think there is a good, sustainable way to milk these toads, especially if this material keeps gaining popularity at the rate that it is. The reality is that they are facing so many different threats simultaneously. There's issues with climate change, there's issues with habitat destruction, there's issues with pesticide contamination. We've created all of these roads. The roads have artificial lights. The toads congregate around the artificial lights because the lights attract insects for them to feed on, but then they get hit by cars and humans catch them. It's this really tragic situation. If you go to Sonora, I think we're all aware of what happens when an animal becomes important in our medical practices. It's almost always disastrous. It never ends well. Whether it's milking hemocyanin from horseshoe crabs, or a really tragic example would be this thing called the scrotum frog that lives in Lake Titicaca, where poaching has decimated the wild population. If that can happen with something that doesn't even do anything, imagine what can happen with something that pretty reliably produces a religious experience. I feel very strongly that the best conservation tactic would be to dedicate any resources that you have to just preserving their habitat or protecting them, and use synthetic material. And yeah, I guess someone agrees, that's good. Now, due to the globalization of the chemical trade, you can get the precursors to make 5-MeO-DMT, which are completely legal internationally. It's, 5-methoxytryptamine is a metabolite of melatonin, and produce it very inexpensively synthetically on as large a scale as you want. Doesn't have to involve toads at all. This is a lucky situation. There's a way to do it sustainably, and I think we should really seriously consider this.
5-MeO-DMT is a controlled substance in the United States, but I'm in Mexico where it is uncontrolled, to show that this is a viable replacement for toads, because I believe one person can produce enough 5-MeO-DMT to supply everyone that would ever want it.
100 grams of 5-methoxytryptamine freebase is dissolved in methanol with vigorous magnetic stirring. A thermometer probe is inserted into the methanolic 5-methoxytryptamine, and the solution is cooled until it nears 0 degrees Celsius. Aqueous potassium hydroxide is used to dissolve and stabilize 100 grams of sodium borohydride, and the solution is transferred into an addition funnel. A second addition funnel is charged with a methanol-stabilized aqueous 37% formaldehyde solution, and the dropwise addition begins.
And now I'm going to start adding the borohydride.
Lone pair electrons on the basic nitrogen attack formaldehyde's carbonyl carbon, forming an imine and water. Hydride attacks the electrophilic imine carbon, and electrons flow into the nitrogen, producing 5-MeO-NMT. The basic nitrogen attacks a second formaldehyde carbonyl, analogously forming a tertiary iminium ion, which is reduced again to produce 5-methoxy-dimethyltryptamine.
Yes, complete transformation of the starting material.
Borate salts gradually precipitate, and the solvent volume is reduced by overnight heating. As the methanol evaporates, 5-MeO-DMT precipitates as a brown oil and coalesces on the surface.
Pretty beautiful.
Simple distillation is used to strip the remaining water, followed by purification of the crude freebase via short-path vacuum distillation.
We did it.
Yes. And recrystallization.
Hi, come in. We can obtain a preliminary results between the reference and compounds that you are synthesizing. Okay?
After TLC had shown total transformation of the starting material, LC-MS confirmed the product was 5-MeO-DMT.
You obtain a great result between your reference and the sample.
It works.
Yeah.
High five.
Yeah, works.
Time for questions. Okay.
Would you consider using synthetic 5-MeO-DMT instead of the toad venom?
Prefiero el natural.
Where I'm coming from, I'm a natural woman. I don't like chemicals.
Yeah.
No creo que se pueda cambiar la perspectiva de la gente de lo sintético a lo natural.
What I'm listening to about your chemical versus from the toad, are we considering that the difference here may be a spirit of a toad that's actually at play here? And if that is the case, is it possible to ever actually synthesize that in the first place?
Right. I do believe that there is no difference between synthetically produced 5-MeO-DMT and 5-MeO-DMT isolated from the secretions of Bufo alvarius.
I work with both synthetic and Bufo 5-MeO-DMT. Smoking the toad is different than smoking the synthetic. It has a different feel to it, so there's something else in there in the mix that distinguishes these two.
I think that we often underestimate our own contribution to these experiences. So we tend to assign it to the drug, but not to ourselves. And that, just in a good old-fashioned psychological sense, will change things. To know that this came from a living organism as opposed to something that was made in a laboratory, it changes things without any kind of necessarily supernatural overlay. I wouldn't assign the experienced differences to chemical differences without a reason to do so. There are arguments that there are a number of different compounds that have been isolated from Bufo alvarius. They all may contribute in an entourage effect that modulates the activity, but there's no evidence for it. And I think it's really important to think about this in an evidence-based way, because even bufotenine,
which is the only other compound that has ever been found in Bufo alvarius that is definitively a psychedelic, is never present in very high concentrations, if at all. It wasn't present in any of the analyses that I did. I don't think that it plays a major role in the experience that everyone is collected here to talk about. It would be more likely, if I had to guess, that it's a dosage difference. The only justifiable reason for milking toads right now is to analyze the venom, figure out exactly what it contains, and then figure out a sustainable synthetic way to recreate it so that we don't need to bother toads.
There seem to be a lot of people, very spiritual people, and I am thinking that you might be a spiritual person.
Absolutely.
And they seem to be opposed to synthetic 5-MeO-DMT.
Yeah, but I believe as the synthetic, you can get the full-on dose, exactly what you want. It's important to me to get that dose just right. Even if they're milked in a good way, one of those toads might have PTSD or something and is freaking out while they're getting milked. I believe that goes into the medicine.
The buffalo population will be very happy if we find another 5-MeO-DMT synthetic. Then he can go to his home again, no, and continue living, because it's gonna help people stop milk toads. It's gonna be the shit. Almost. I know the toads because of him. I read the book. I think he's a very interesting guy. But I think it was a good thing to find a real guy, no?
In late August of 2019, after I had met his friends and come to have a more complete understanding of his research, the real Albert Most, Ken Nelson, invited me to visit him in his assisted living facility. Parkinson's disease had taken Ken's strength, but he still had the energy to discuss his discovery that changed the world.
Hey, Hamilton.
Hello. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Good meeting you. This is my example of a psychedelic toad, by the way. I researched it. I knew what I had, I knew what it was. It's Colorado River toad. It's unique. It's got glands on its back legs, arms, shoulders, and then a really big gland on the parotid. I harvested them and smoked it. I was first.
And what is the experience like when you smoke Bufo alvarius?
It's overwhelming. You want to hold your breath as long as possible and take it all in one hit. And it comes over you like a white light.
And you weren't afraid?
No. It's a trip. That's the experience right there. That opened the door for a lot of stuff I suppose the average person wasn't exposed to.
The toads are now threatened in their natural environment, that climate change and over-harvesting of their venom may have caused a decline in the natural population. When you were done with the first toad that you ever milked, did you release it back into the wild?
Oh yeah, I didn't keep them. I put Aesop's fables in my book. Instead of trying to say, don't do it, I presented Aesop's fables. Read out of that if you want.
I really appreciate that you're telling me all of this.
It's a good story.
It's a great story. It's an amazing story.
Was this a wrap?
This is a wrap for now, yes.
Okay.
Do you want some of your milkshake?
Yes, thank you.
So one product of Ken's anonymity was that other people could come in, they could steal his work, they could sell T-shirts, and now that he's decided to take credit for his research, I was thinking that you could help.
Absolutely. Ken has a copyright. Gail's drawings are beautiful. Making money off of it, it happens to be illegal.
Confirm to us in writing that you will cease and desist. You think that's strong enough?
Can it be even more threatening and still legally binding?
Blatant egregiousness.
I was also thinking, with your permission, that it would be interesting to reissue the pamphlet, but with a final page that identified the possibility of producing 5-MeO-DMT synthetically.
Yeah, we could reissue the book and give Ken credit. That would be good.
I reissued the pamphlet with a sustainable method for the production of 5-MeO-DMT, and all of the proceeds go to toad conservation and Parkinson's disease research.
Well, one thing I'm glad about is that in making the mistake, I was able to learn the real story. If I hadn't had this weird interview with the almost imposter, I would have ever known the true story of the discovery of smoking Bufo alvarius venom.
Then I'm thrilled that you're helping get the truth out, because it's a beautiful story, and Ken's a beautiful man.
It's been a very lucky 35 years for me, there's no doubt, to ride his coattails. He just wanted to spread the word. It was important to him just to spread the word.
My mission is to correct the mistakes that I've made, but also the indiscriminate use of toad venom. I do think this is a viable synthetic alternative to milking toads. It means that people can divorce themselves from any sort of toad harassment in the 21st century.
Nobody really knows what to do with this stuff, and so we have to learn from the mistakes that we've made in the past, and we have to construct our own culture surrounding it. And it's only getting bigger, so I think now is really a great time to figure out how best to do this so that we can keep doing it into the future. Thanks, everybody.
Go, come again. Continue living.